Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about Irish interests and why it exists. We're going to do this because over on the second channel, there was a question at the end of the most recent The Road's Not Taken episode. And I answered it because I thought it was common knowledge. I didn't expand on it. It became very clear within minutes that it's not common knowledge, and I did not do a good job of going over why. Dozens of questions came in asking why the Irish or Irish Americans have a vested interest in the current conflict in the Middle East and why their opinions are very strong. I read all of the questions. I'm going to read this one because it's broad in scope, and I think it will answer everybody else's along the way. Okay, I watched your recap video with the questions at the end. You talked about how the Irish and Irish Americans have an interest in, quote, the conflict. That was surprising to me. I have to admit I wanted to know which side they were on. I know that sounds horrible. When I read about it, I began to understand less. It seems like in the beginning, they supported us and were our friends. But somewhere it changed and they supported the Palestinians. What I was reading said this was because the Irish became leftist. I think I learned from you that they were always leftists. I'm just wondering if you could tell me what happened. Yeah. Okay. So yes, Irish Republicans are nothing like American Republicans. And this goes back to, look at 1916, the GPO, the post office. Look at the proclamation. That's not a right-wing document. So from the beginning, when this topic came up, the Irish movement was already left. Okay, so that's definitely not the change. The source you were reading probably didn't want to acknowledge what caused the change because it's really, really simple. In the beginning, the Irish were incredibly supportive of the idea of a homeland for Jewish people. Why? Because they saw parallels. They could identify with it. They were a people who wanted their homeland as well. So they saw this connection. And it didn't end there. There's also the massive migration. There's a whole bunch of things that drew parallels. Ireland changed over time. Ireland became a country, but not all of it. It was partitioned. It was partitioned. When Israel became Israel, what happened? A partition showed up in Israel. At that point, the Irish no longer identified with the Israelis. They started to view the Israelis as more like the British because of the partition. At that point, sentiment started to grow for the Palestinian side, and that sentiment still exists today. Throughout the Troubles in Ireland, you will see overt connections being drawn. In fact, one of the more famous images as far as art and murals that came out of Ireland is an Irish, whatever term you want to use, somebody who was active in the conflict, holding a rifle, and another person's holding their rifle. They're Palestinian. And below it, it says one struggle. That connection, it still impacts Irish politics today in the country. Here in the U.S., if you were to walk into an establishment that passes the hat for the cause, you would probably see Irish decor everywhere, on the walls, posters, murals. Everything would be about Ireland. But somewhere in there, there'd be a Palestinian flag. That connection, it's based on the partition. It has nothing to do with right and left. It's something that exists in the Irish consciousness. And to be fair, I think it may actually be more pronounced among Irish Americans than Irish in Ireland. It still impacts their politics, but I don't know that it is as unified. And I could be wrong about that. But that's what it comes from. It comes from shifting dynamics and a shifting perception. It's really that simple. And again, reading the message, I wanted to know what side they were on. I know that sounds horrible. When I read about it, I began to understand less. It seems like in the beginning they supported us and were our friends. Countries don't have friends. They have interests. It changes. That's where it comes from. That's why the coverage elicits such a response. And that was the basis of the question over on the other channel, was why is there so much reaction in the United States to this conflict? And that goes to two things. One, if any conflict was covered the way this one gets covered, showing the footage that is shown, it would elicit a reaction. At the same time, news outlets aren't incentivized to provide coverage like that of every conflict, because they don't have built-in groups in the United States who care about it. They don't care about the conflicts, the other conflicts, the same way. In the United States, obviously, Jewish Americans, they have an interest in what happens. Arab Americans have an interest in what happens. So do Irish Americans. So it has a built-in audience. And so people in news agencies who decide on coverage, they know that this will be viewed because there's a built-in audience. When that coverage is provided, other people who don't have a vested interest, they see the coverage and they also have a reaction. It's important to remember that what you're seeing, that's war. That's what conflict looks like, all of it. It's not always covered that way. People don't see the footage. People don't see the inhumanity. But trust me, that's every conflict all around the world. War is bad. It's always horrible. But that's the basis of it. The basis of the shift, the basis of the interest, it's all based on the perceptions of the time and the interests at the time. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.